Thank you everybody for joining. What an awesome show so far. It's been a pleasure to watch all the sessions. And thank you, audience, for joining today's debate around the growth trajectory of the Stellar network and what we expect for the network itself, as well as for the Stellar community and ecosystem in the months and years ahead. As Justin mentioned, I'm Boris Reznikov, your host for this session. I'm the Director of Business Development at the Stellar Development Foundation. And I expect to have a very lively discussion today with our esteemed panel of speakers. To provide some additional context on the topic, we know that tech platforms tend to be dynamic and adaptive. But I think this is especially true for a decentralized network like Stellar, where all of the participants, from the small developers that are hacking away in a garage, all the way to large corporations building production products on Stellar, can have a direct influence as to the direction that the tech takes as it grows and evolves. And this applies not just to the focus of the technology, what it's applied to, but also to the actual features and capabilities that the platform provides. And I'm particularly excited for this session because we've got an all-star group of debaters with me today. Each of them represents a business that is leveraging Stellar in its own way to solve very different problems. And so with that, I'll hand it over to our panel to introduce themselves. I'd love it if you could introduce yourself and provide a little bit of context on your company and what your involvement in the Stellar ecosystem looks like. Mary, why don't you kick us off, please?
Sure. Thank you, Boris. Thank you very much. My name is Mary Saracco. I am the founder and CFO of Settle Network. Settle is the largest cross-border payment company in Latin America. We focus specifically on settlements, cross-border settlements and remittance, and on fiat gateways, fiat on and off ramp in Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, etc. We are one of Stellar's anchors in Latin America. And if you have seen the video before this panel, you guys were seeing Vibrant, and we are the fiat gateway partner for Vibrant. And also, if you've seen the ARST, we are the issuers of the ARST, the Stellar stablecoin of Argentinian peso in Argentina. We're also one of Stellar's portfolio companies, and we're very, very happy to keep building on Stellar.
Awesome, thank you very much. Seth, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm very happy to be here. It's about almost 4 o'clock in the morning here in Tokyo, Japan, where I live. But so if I phase out here and there, please bear with me. I'm not usually up at this hour. So my name is Seth Melamed. I'm the CEO of Liquid Group. We're an exchange based here in Asia. We operate in Japan as well as in Singapore, and we cover primarily Asia, but really have a reach globally. I guess what brought me into the Stellar Development Foundation fold and starting to learn about Stellar was really going back to last year when Ethereum gas prices started really taking off, and it became a real problem for me as the CEO of the exchange, managing increasing fees for transactions. And of course, we've seen the rise of the importance of stablecoins, and there was just a huge amount of growth. However, it was causing a lot of friction for our clients and unhappiness with us as an exchange, not necessarily associating or not able to differentiate between network fees versus what they're being charged by the exchange. So that kind of led us to Stellar and what was being done with the USDC first and foremost, and being able to take advantage of all the high throughput and fast transactions, low fees of the Stellar blockchain. And then we've been starting to work with other stable coins such as the Settle coins, the ARST and the BRLT, which we plan to be listing on Liquid very soon. So with that said, I'm very happy to be here and looking forward to meeting my esteemed colleagues.
Awesome, thank you, Seth. Meinhard, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me a third time in a row, third year in a row. So I'm the founder and CEO of SatoshiPay, and yeah, we've been in the Stellar ecosystem for since 2017. I'm personally already since yeah, let's say 10 years in the crypto ecosystem, essentially a coder since I was 12 years old. So I kind of look at things from a technical perspective, and that's kind of what brought us to Stellar initially. Fees, obviously, as already mentioned, was a big thing. Bitcoin fees in 2017 went through the roof as well, 16, 17. And but also the governance of how Stellar is run, and also the sort of no hype approach we like a lot. Kind of also this translates to very down to earth decisions on a technical level, and that really appealed to us. So we have several touch points with the Stellar Foundation. There was a collaboration regarding user credits for our products, but also some funding. And also we run a lot of nodes, and yeah, we are very active contributors. We also run Solar, which is yeah, like a Stellar wallet for all platforms. And as products, we have like a Stellar-based micropayments product for digital content. And then also D-Transfer, which is a cross-border money transfer service for businesses, also leveraging the USDC and Euro token as stablecoins and also others. So really kind of doing the whole chain on the Stellar chain of the whole life cycle of a cross-border transfer. And as our latest addition and like largest project so far, Pendulum, which brings DeFi to Stellar, and almost as a side product or side effect, some smart contracts also. So we've just closed a $5 million private pre-sale for that. We're now working on our testnet. And also we have built a playground, as we call it, for Pendulum, where you can try out AMM and also bridging funds over from Stellar into Pendulum. And that's available in the Meridian demo section. So have a look at the Meridian demo section. You can see a full introduction by Thorsten, our CTO there, and kind of very soon also be able to try it out yourself. So yeah, happy to be here and happy to talk about growth.
Awesome. Thank you, Meinhard. 3 years in a row, but each year you bring something new and exciting that you're building on Stellar. So happy to hear about it. And of course, last but not least, Patrick.
Hey, Boris, thanks. And good to hear from the other guests on this panel here. And I'm pleased to be here with them. So I'm Patrick Campos, the Chief Strategy Officer from Securrency here. I'm speaking to you from Abu Dhabi, so not quite as far as Tokyo, but still it's late at night here. Securrency is really a blockchain-based digital assets infrastructure company. We focus from the beginning on digital security, so regulated assets, and we built out a pretty comprehensive infrastructure. But specifically in terms of our relationship with Stellar, which goes back quite some time, and we've really enjoyed a great relationship with the entire SDF team. But very specifically, we've done a couple of things that I think are notable. One is we've worked with them on a pilot project on traceable loans, really demonstrating how multilateral organizations providing much needed lending into developing countries can do this in a very transparent manner that ensures that the value gets to where it's most needed. And in addition to that, we've also built directly onto the Stellar network, onto the Stellar ledger, certain functionality that's required for regulatory approval of securities transactions on a ledger. So most specifically the clawback capability, and that was done fairly recently. So again, pleased to be here and looking forward to a great discussion.
Awesome. Thank you very much, everyone. So let's jump into our first topic, which is, looking forward, will Stellar continue to have a primary focus on remittances? Or should it look at other payments use cases? And to provide a little bit of context to this discussion, as many of us know, Stellar was designed from the beginning as a platform that makes sending payments as easy as sending an email. And to date, much of the activity on the network has really focused on cross-border payments, and in particular, the subset of remittances, which for anyone who is not familiar, remittances refer to high volume, low value P2P payments, peer-to-peer payments. So typically going from a developed area to an underdeveloped area where people living abroad are sending money back to their families. But of course, there's a lot more to payments than just remittances. Even within the cross-border subset. And so the question to the group is, do you think the Stellar network should continue to focus on remittances as a primary use case, or do you see a bigger opportunity in other areas of payments like B2B, consumer to merchants, so buying things from merchants, or something else entirely like payroll? Mary, I think, when you and I were discussing this earlier, you've done some work around remittances in your part of the world in Latin America. What's your take on this?
Thank you, Boris. Well, my specific take, I don't want to say I'm a bit biased because Settle focuses on remittance and cross-border payments, but also I believe that definitely remittance, P2P, payments need to be predominantly and need to be the main focus of Stellar, specifically for the reason that I believe everybody will agree is one of crypto's main use cases. I think that if we look at in the crypto space in general, we can see many use cases, but the real one that we're seeing a lot of people going into, and the real reason why people today are buying Bitcoin and buying crypto in general, is because of hedging inflation, because they need to send money abroad, etc. And I think that is a real use case other than speculation and other uses that we've seen that are not as predominant or not as more of a long-term solution. So remittance, I think, is the most relevant use case in the crypto industry, and it's in the highest demand in developing economies. So if you're looking at having a developmental impact in terms of like financially, I believe remittance is definitely a focus Stellar should maintain.
And Seth and Meinhard, you both may take an opposing view here. I know Meinhard, for instance, you've spent a lot of time working on a different part of payments around micropayments and B2B. What do you think? Is remittance the be all end all within the payments sphere, or do you see it otherwise?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say opposing. Obviously, remittances and cross-border transfers are very important for us as well. But those can be done in other chains, let's say, for example, as well. But what I really would like that micropayments or even nano payments continue to be possible. So we have the 5-second final settlement. That's amazing. That's not really the case in many chains. And also the super easy token setup. So like sending a fraction of a cent in a different token is amazing. Like, like a tenth of a cent over the network in 5 seconds. So yeah, please make sure that the fees stay low as they are. Scale as you must on chain. That's very, very important. So I think micropayments, it makes it still very special also for us, and we use this heavily in one of our products, obviously. Also, of course, B2B payments are a focus of ours that we would like to continue doing on Stellar, obviously. So yeah, the focus on compliance and having an easy on and off ramping, I think, is the key there, meaning building more anchors, supporting anchors as much as you can, and also have like anchors with like a business focus or an easy business setup, and feed into compliance frameworks, as already mentioned. In Europe, we have MiCA and DORA, so these kind of things should be made possible as well, and are very, very important for businesses to operate on Stellar. And yeah, obviously the stability and safety that comes through the focus on the basic building blocks of a chain. Don't go too crazy with everything. Kind of focus on the simple things that you do well, and kind of keep that approach. That will be my plea, let's say, to SDF as much influence as you have. Yeah, those two things are the main use cases I see.
Got it. And Seth, from your perspective at a major exchange, you serve both retail customers and institutional customers. What do you think is the most interesting or most attractive opportunity within payments from the perspective of a major exchange? What are your customers asking for that you think Stellar should focus on? Seth, I think you are muted.
So sorry about that. I definitely concur with some of my colleagues, right? I think, one of the most important factors is the fast transaction confirmation times and low fees. So Where we're seeing adoption, and I think we have a really good, interesting use case at Liquid, because we had listed the USDC ERC20 a couple years ago, and then we listed the Stellar version of USDC. I think it was around May of this year, so much more recent. And what we've seen is really a nice pickup of usage of the Stellar version of USDC, in particular because of the much lower transaction costs. And what we're seeing is that in some cases you're seeing a lot of peer-to-peer type of payments for people, where they can really take advantage of those lower costs. And I would expect that adoption to increase. So what I measure is sort of the percentage of USDC that we hold in each network, and I'll expect that we'll continue to see this growth of USDC and Stellar in general, so long as transaction speeds are fast and costs remain really low.
Yeah, it's interesting. Remittances and micropayments are quite similar, actually. I was just thinking, because typically remittance payments tend to be very low value. And so, if you can do micropayments efficiently, just as efficient as, the large ticket transactions that some of Liquid's institutional customers may desire, then you can really, address the full spectrum of payments in all of their variety. And this got me thinking, we've been speaking about cross-border payments in particular. And of course, we all know that there's a lot of friction in cross-border. What about domestic payments? Is that a solved problem? Or has that been, has that reached perfection, or is that something that we should be thinking about as well? And by we, I mean, the whole Stellar ecosystem, open to anyone.
Definitely, Boris. And I think that Vibrant is trying to capture that market. Vibrant has launched in Argentina, focusing right now to offer Argentinians the possibility to buy USDC out from pesos and ARST. And the biggest challenge there is focusing on solving. In the US, you guys have Venmo, but in Argentina, we don't have such thing. And there is no such thing in Latin America in general. So solving that payment situation, local payments or bill paying, or salaries, etc., or type of small transactions as well, I think it's a great issue to tackle. And I believe Vibrant is trying to go into that direction, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done.
Yeah, makes sense. And Patrick, I want to get your view here, and it's a perfect opportunity to shift to the second prompt, the second topic, which is around payments versus everything else. There's a big world out there. What other areas can Stellar address? And just to provide a little bit more context, we've talked a lot about cross-border payments, domestic payments, both micro payments and larger ones, and certainly a lot of the efforts of the various teams building in the Stellar ecosystem are focused on driving the role of Stellar as a payments network, both domestic and cross-border. But as big as the payment space is, there's plenty of other interesting use cases for distributed ledger technology and for Stellar specifically outside of payments. So the question is, what other areas should the Stellar ecosystem be focused on? Is it payroll? Is it credit on the blockchain? Is it tokenization of real world assets, NFTs, DeFi, and the list goes on and seems to be growing kind of every week. And so, Patrick, I'd love to hear a little bit about how Securrency looks at this, maybe diving into a little bit about what you're doing with Securrency on Stellar and how that may or may not bridge into payments.
Yeah, so look, this is styled as a debate, so let's spice it up a little bit. I think it's a no-brainer, right? I mean, I'd love to hear the other side of this argument, because let's think about in our name, for example, we contemplated right from the very beginning that value is value, and how you want to hold your value and transact your value, is something of a personal decision. So if I want to hold and transact in value that has an investment thesis around it, I should be able to do that. Hence the name of the company, right? Securities and currency kind of amalgamated. And what we found, obviously, you've ticked off a list of all sorts of value that's been created, and some of it is poo-pooed by different people in, the mainstream world, but it's value. And so I think that when we think about if you say, well, should the Stellar network be limited to payments? The question is, well, what the heck is a payment? And when you really expand on that question, again, I think it sort of answers itself. We've been, as you know, we've been really focused on digital securities, but not just digital securities, but making them accessible and transactable as payments. And this is a really important thing. That isn't to say that everything that purports to be a security and that is tokenized, has exchangeability in that sense, or transactability in that sense. But many of the things that we transact in as securities on different rails, have the kind of liquidity and the kind of stable value that that people would desire, and then actually begin to replace the concept of a bank account. If I can hold my assets, my investment assets, and transact in them, we're really reimagining where things are going, and so in that sense, I think Stellar really positions itself as a low cost, high speed network of possibilities. And so again, I'm ready to hear the other side of it, but I'm not sure there's a good argument that the network should be limited to just the sort of traditional things that we consider as payments. Drop the mic there.
Who wants to react to that? Or should the Stellar network focus on many things, including payments and something completely apart from that, like NFTs, with an ultimate aim to bring the two together?
Absolutely. I agree with Patrick in this sense. It doesn't need to circumscribe to a specific vertical in payments. And I think that you mentioned NFTs. Definitely there's a lot of incoming on the gaming space, but also there's a lot of total value locked on other blockchains that can definitely be used in Stellar, specifically on everything that has to do with DeFi products, right? Farming, yield, lending, staking, so many things that can still be, merged into the Stellar ecosystem. And this will definitely, encouraging all of these areas, will definitely bring a lot of that value from other blockchains into Stellar. And then they can definitely look into other, like the main core of remittance and cross-border payments. But I think that as we expand and as we, provide more uses and more verticals for the community, we will have more incoming players to build on Stellar. And I think that is the ultimate goal.
That makes a lot of sense. Seth, you guys work with a lot of different blockchains, a lot of different use cases, a lot of applications. What do you think is the most exciting? What do you think Stellar should focus on?
Yeah, so I think we've definitely seen a lot of interest from our user base in, I almost want to say like debanking themselves or unbanking themselves, right? I know that's a phrase others have used, but I think we're really seeing it. And so I think if you think about crypto and what it unlocks for people, it certainly unlocks like a lot of self-sovereignty in terms of having your own wallet, faster settlement times, which is really important in many different contexts, which we've already discussed here. But I think what people are really looking for, and we've seen this in some of our product offerings, is the ability to also find ways to monetize and sort of earn on some of their crypto holdings. So I think further development of yielding products and liquidity pools these are going to be things that will really help that sort of transition I think we're having from sort of fiat-based to more blockchain-based ways of managing our finances.
Meinhard, what's your view on payments versus non-payments?
I mean, payments obviously should not be switched off, so keep them. Non-payments, I mean, there's things like NFTs are interesting, but that is kind of opening a can of worms. Once you have, NFTs as a special sort of asset in there, then the next thing might come along, and then there might be the effect of feature bloat, and then I think that's definitely what you want to avoid on like ledger size, but also in terms of code base. What I think should actually happen is CBDCs on Stellar. I mean, there's a great deal of talk about that. I want to see it. I want to have a CBDC on Stellar, next year. So that would really increase the quality of fiat stable coins, and then also the reputation, I would say, of Stellar. So yeah, that's something definitely I want to see. I mean, it is again an asset. So technically, I think it's not really any different from what's there now. It's really the focus of business development, I suppose, of the Stellar Foundation or some other entity that works closely with the government to make that even happen. And one other side thing, I mean, simple things like notarization. I mean, we have this timestamping engine that works perfectly well. And we don't really see that being used in notarization at all. So maybe there's an angle to bring that to the world where you need like a notarized land registry or these kind of things. So I think it's a basic feature technically, but the impact on societies around the world can be quite significant.
I agree.
I want to add something. I believe that all of these verticals are very good, but there is a very big need from Stellar to create those incentives so that other projects, companies, the community can start to build all of these items on top of Stellar. And as long as Stellar keeps providing those incentives that, that allow other companies to build and create value, but also to generate a profit and revenue, I think Stellar can become the #1 blockchain within months, definitely.
Yep, incentives are definitely important, as we've seen with the growth trajectories of lots of companies in the space. So with that, let's move on to prompt number 3, which we touched on briefly around AMMs and DeFi and what will be the impact of this on the Stellar ecosystem. And so just a few weeks ago on November 3rd, we saw Stellar validators vote to upgrade the network to Protocol 18. It's a big upgrade in the ecosystem, and so Protocol 18 notably added automated market maker AMM functionality to the Stellar protocol, so natively in the protocol itself. And to quickly provide some context for anyone who's less familiar with the concept, AMMs or automated market makers now enable interfaces that allow users to deposit all sorts of assets into liquidity pools that generate a return for them, while also helping to create liquidity for cross-asset conversion, which is really a lot of what Stellar is about, is allowing people to go from one asset to another. And so this is liquidity that the whole ecosystem can leverage. And what's particularly interesting about the Stellar implementation of this is that it's a protocol native feature, which means you don't need smart contracts to create liquidity pools, which increases access to this. But also it's that these liquidity pools can coexist with the Stellar decentralized exchange or the DEX. So it's not replacing it, but rather it will coexist alongside it. So now cross-asset payments, whether cross-border payments or anything else, can be routed either through AMM liquidity pools or the DEX, whichever one yields the best conversion rate. And so with that context, the question to the panel is, what will be the impact of the launch of AMMs on the Stellar ecosystem? Who will we see uptake coming from? Will it be from traders, speculators, or anchors, or somebody else entirely? Is baking the AMM into the protocol layer itself, as is the case here, the right approach, or should it be on a kind of application level? Who wants to opine on that piece? Meinhard, please.
Yeah, so maybe I go first here. It's you kind of prompted already a response here. So baking it in the protocol is one approach, and that it's here now so fast, that it was delivered in such a short time, is pretty amazing. What we saw, or what we see still, is that it's kind of inflexible in some way by design. But if I want to have, let's say, the latest, swapping algorithm, or like a slightly optimized algorithm for a specific use case, and just want to kind of make that interact with NFTs and these kind of things, or like foreign tokens from other chains, we are hitting limits really fast. So, and also, if you want to have a new protocol version and you want to roll it out to the main protocol, this might become slow. So while it covers a certain minimal use case and brings liquidity to the network, which is great, and people will start staking, and we can also leverage that on other side projects, or like side chain projects. But for example, if you want to have parallel AMMs, like different approaches, kind of let them A/B test against each other, that wouldn't be possible. And I kind of, as I said, I like that it's by design like that. But yeah, we think like a generic smart contract is a solution to these things, where maybe even that's something that proves useful can make it to the main protocol. But in a playing field where you can, as a developer, develop your own flavor of something, and then kind of let it try out, and then adjust it a little bit again, and then you don't have to roll out network updates to all validators at all times. So, and then also with a smart contracting language, like a generic smart contracting language like Pendulum offers, you can do things like NFT royalties, or even ERC20 support that I already mentioned before, or like a loan application, anything sort of arbitrary that you maybe use from other full smart contract networks. And also oracles can be implemented in a nice way, kind of voting against each other and these kind of things. So I welcome it, definitely. And we were happy to see that developing so fast. But even before we set out to build Pendulum, we knew that AMMs will come. It didn't stop us for all the reasons that I mentioned before.
Seth, what are you seeing from your vantage point in terms of how DeFi might impact the ecosystem?
Well, I think there's a great opportunity. It's clear that people like to have the flexibility of entering into the DeFi ecosystem for lending, liquidity providing, swapping. There's all kinds of use cases. And what's really amazing to me is that we've seen the growth of DeFi on the Ethereum network, even though the transaction costs may be, could be $30, $40, $100. So it's prohibitively expensive for people to participate in smaller amounts, because the transaction fee I see sometimes, you'll see on Uniswap or liquidity pools where the transaction fees are greater than the actual value that's being exchanged. So I think there is a great opportunity to develop more DeFi applications on top of the Stellar blockchain. And I just, it requires support and more participants, and I guess, but it'll come, because what we've seen for sure is that the market has a way of people tend to gravitate towards better, faster, and lower cost. So I think if a lot of the infrastructure that's already out there on other blockchains is able to be developed on top of Stellar, you're going to see explosive growth there.
Open question to the group. We have so many companies that are actively developing applications for users, but in the background, kind of underneath all of that, we see on Stellar, as well as every other chain, a lot of the activity being driven by speculative trading.
Yeah.
And is this activity helpful or hurtful? Should it be fostered? Is it sustainable? How do you folks see what is the role of the speculator in the space?
Yeah, can I, if you don't mind, because I manage a trading venue, so I sort of have mixed thoughts about it, right? So without this, and I think in a lot of new asset classes or even in technologies, it starts off with speculation, and that's an important sort of bootstrapping, if you will. But if the technology and the use cases end there, it will die a very quick death. Is it useful or not? So I think it's mixed. And let's give some examples. I do worry about things like, the things, the growth of mem coins that maybe don't have a lot of utility that anyone can really think of. But there's, a huge amount of marketing behind these projects. And there's, ideas about people getting rich quick. This is problematic. I speak for myself here. So I had a 3.5-hour call with the Singaporean Monetary Authority, and as part of our licensing process. And this sort of speculation or opportunity where sort of consumers could get damaged from over amount of speculation is not something that they're really they don't want to see their licensees sort of participate in, right? And I see another example happening right now with one of the stable coins, where the price of the stable coin, simply because of the supply demand dynamic, the price of the stable coin as compared to dollar is maybe 4 times greater within the DeFi universe, simply because traders see the price going up, not really considering that it's a stable coin, but they see it going up. So more traders come in and they buy it because it looks like it's got a good chart or something like that. Sort of ignoring the fact that the asset itself is a stable coin. It is designed to have a stable price. And due to certain lack of liquidity, this phenomenon is happening. Again, not a good thing for the blockchain, for the community. So I think there is a balance that we have to find.
Yep. And Seth, sorry to cut you off. I think that's a fantastic point. And you have a great perspective on this from where you sit. I just want to make sure we keep moving and don't run out of time. So apologies. Let's, with that, move on to the fourth and final prompt, which is around scalability and what the path forward looks like there. And so, we've discussed a wide range of use cases and applications of the Stellar network so far. And of course, that means we need the network to be able to scale with this increased traffic that these use cases are generating, both speculative use cases, as Seth was mentioning, as well as perhaps more real use cases. And luckily, the Stellar consensus protocol is one of the more efficient consensus algorithms especially among mature production-ready blockchains. But that doesn't mean that Stellar doesn't have its own limitations, as all decentralized systems do. Today, we're seeing Stellar running at around, on average, 25 to 40 to 50% network capacity. And so the question is, you all build products on the Stellar network. Do you see this as a concern, or do you breathe easy because we have plenty of room to go? Perhaps surge pricing for transactions will kick in once we start reaching the upper bounds of scalability and essentially help to prioritize network usage. How do you folks see this question? Meinhard, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. So I mean, at the moment, capacity is abundant. But we have also seen, so we've been part of the network for quite some time and running nodes, and we see the ledger size and syncing of a full history node is taking quite a long time and resources, like CPU resources. You need quite powerful computers to run a full node. So maybe some sort of sharding would make keeping the archive much easier. And we've seen surge pricing hit once or twice in the past, and one IoT-focused project with millions of transactions because of millions of devices, famously changed chain, and then surge pricing went down again. So it's not the chain for each use case, and that really plays also into our general approach that not the vertical scaling of chains is the way to go. That you kind of make one chain, have as many throughput as possible, as much throughput as possible, but kind of go horizontal and maybe add side chains or like bridging chains. And so not to toot my horn, I hope it's not rude to toot my horn too many times here, but obviously we are building something that can be used as an offloading mechanism also for Stellar-based activity. And that's really, I think we would like to see more of that, where we have projects linking to it. And also maybe a channel or a sort of a lightning system or network that adds a new layer on top of Stellar, an actual layer 2 to Stellar, would be a way to go. And we've seen activity in that, but we would want to see that also to be brought into production. So once we have a project that maybe wants to do IoT again or something else that's very, very transaction intense, give them the opportunity to also run on Stellar. So I think these are the main areas that I would like to see being invested a bit more in.
Yep. That makes perfect sense. Patrick, I'm curious to hear from your perspective. You speak with many large institutions, both traditional and more innovative. I'm sure the question or topic of scalability comes up in discussions with these partners. What do those discussions sound like, and how important of a topic is this to your stakeholders with your partners as they imagine the products that they envision building going forward into the years ahead?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. I mean, frankly, it doesn't come up often, and the reason I think for that is that even though there's an awful lot of work being done, so if you think about it, sort of under the surface, there's a ton of work that's being done. What's above the surface, the actual assets that are being put out there, it's still a relatively small number, and that's obviously going to grow exponentially in the coming years. So it's still at a stage, I think, right now with many institutions where they're really focused on really honing in on very specific use cases, and this is not yet an issue that that they think about. I think there's another aspect of it too, and that is that there's if you look within a lot of organizations, they're generally populated by people who are sort of solidity engineers, and then they come from that background. And so when we introduce the concept, hey, you can actually do these things on the Stellar network, it's sort of new. And so they're really focused on, hey, look at the possibilities here with the speed and the low cost. And so that tends to take precedence over sort of, some of the more background issues as they dig in a bit further. So we're still, it's a rapidly expanding market when we're talking about institutions, but it's still early days yet. And they're not yet in that sort of, let's call it, grungy, cynical phase of thinking about esoteric issues like this, which we know is true in the in the broader crypto community. So not really an issue that comes up often, but as we as we see the more rapid adoption, which we anticipate in the next couple of years, that will be a topic for conversation.
Makes perfect sense. And Seth, I'd like to hear from your side. Obviously, a centralized exchange, the trading on your platform does not depend on the scalability of each blockchain on which the assets are built, but certainly the funding, the deposits and the withdrawals and any other kind of tangential use cases that you want to build do depend on that. And so how do you see network scalability from your seat at Liquid? And you're muted, Seth.
Apologies. Yeah, you're quite right. So where we're seeing a lot of uptake is when people have a better on-off ramps to to the network. So when the network utility increases, it sort of drives further adoption. And I think where we're seeing a lot is people look at our liquid exchange as sort of a gateway towards a decentralized network like Stellar. And you know, the more access that we build, I think the more adoption that you start to see that's happening on chain as well, with, you know, any number of different applications that are being built. So I guess the more applications that are built, the more use cases, it just kind of further encourages people who are not yet in the crypto industry, and all of us already are, but sometimes you have to take a step back that crypto is still in its very beginning stages, and still you probably have at least 90% of the world that's not really holding crypto or using crypto in any manner. So as the scalability and applications are growing, the demand for better on-ramps onto the network are increasing, and that's kind of a big focus that we have at Liquid right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
I agree with what Seth says, and that is the thesis that drove Settle to become mainly the largest fiat gateway in Latin America. We realized how the opportunity was there, the demand was there for people in LATAM to start buying crypto as a way to hedge inflation and hedge unstable currencies and volatile governments. So then we said, okay, the demand is there. How can we give access to all of these people? Originally, it was the informal market, the side market, people buying on cash, crypto on cash, and that of course is very risky for many reasons. And then we said, okay, let's start doing the infrastructure part. This will be the gateway, the key part, in order to then start building and start accessing DeFi products and more complex products in the crypto industry. But we need to have the door. And we need to create this for the community. So that's why we have focused a lot on having all the best banking relationships, talking to banks, talking with regulators, meeting with the central banks in different countries, explaining what crypto was and trying to get an account, get a payment processing license, get all of the licenses available, and focusing a lot of compliance so that we could enable fiat gateways and fiat on and off ramps.
Awesome. Well, thank you, all of you, so much for joining today. We're out of time, but I'm truly so thankful for you to come from Germany, from Abu Dhabi, from Tokyo, from Buenos Aires, and contributing to this discussion today about the future of the Stellar Network. So thank you very much again for participating and for everything that you do every day to make Stellar the vibrant community and ecosystem that it is.